Welcome to One and All. I'm Ted Franklin, one of the coordinators of System Change, Not Climate Change, an ecosocialist network founded by US and Canadian activists in 2013. Today, our presenters are two climate activists from Portugal who are organizing under the banner All In. They say we have an urgent problem to solve, that we're caught between the devil and the deep blue sea. Increasingly, people see that capitalism is the root cause of the climate crisis. And we also see daunting deadlines right in a rapidly degrading planet. So the solution is easy. All we need to do is overthrow capitalism and fix the climate. But people have been trying to overthrow capitalism for more than 150 years. So how do we respond realistically to the urgency of our present situation? Here to talk about that today are Alice Gato and Mariana Rodrigues, two Gen Z climate justice activists who have worked together in the Portuguese climate organization Climaximo. In January, Mariana and Sinan Eden, another Climaximo militant, published a provocative book, All In, a revolutionary theory to stop climate collapse. Out of that book has emerged a series of online and face-to-face encounters to engage with climate activists throughout Europe and beyond. Today, we'll start with a brief presentation by our two guests, then move into a Q&A, saving time at the end of our time together to talk about what next? Where do we go from here? So without further ado, Alice and Mariana, take it from here.
All right. I'm Alice. I'm, as Ted said, from Climaximo, which is a climate justice group in Portugal. I've actually met Ted and other people from System Change, Not Climate Change a few years ago when me and another comrade went to the US to try to launch a student-led campaign called End Fossil Occupy, which, well, it happened in one place in the US, but in Portugal and in Europe, it was able to occupy several of schools to demand the end to fossil fuels by 2030. And this was done through Fridays for Future. So I've been organizing since I was in high school. Currently, I'm just organizing with Climaximo, doing a lot of international work and a lot of international coordination attempts. Neither of them have actually, been able to lead us to victory. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. And so I'm here to talk about this book, which Mariana and Sinan wrote. I've been with them throughout the process, and now I am with them to try to get this word out because our movement desperately needs a revolutionary theory to stop climate collapse. And that's it from me, and I'll pass to Mariana.
Hi, everybody. Very happy to be here today, and thank you for the invitation. I'm Mariana. I'm based in Lisbon, in Portugal, and I have been doing what you can say has activism in the last 10 years, maybe. So I started in more students unions and human rights organization, and was like in LGBT marches and so around these kind of topics. And eventually in 2019, I joined the climate justice movement. I joined Climaximo, and I have been organizing there since then. And I have been doing a lot of international work I was doing already beforehand, more in terms of like human rights issues through International Amnesty. But since I joined Climaximo, so since 2019, that I have been doing international work for trying to build international at European level or global level platforms to coordinate the movement and to be able to have strategies and ways of us to escalate and to actually do the task that we have in front of us. And it's a little bit based on that we also put together the book. And we will talk a little bit about, like why we are here, what was the book about, me and Elise, and then we'll open for more conversations. So stay a little bit with us. Yeah, so why we did the book. And Elise, you can pass the slide. Why we did it, what is it, and how, for what is it? So that's what we want to talk a little bit today with you. And has that said it in the beginning, we are more and more aware in the movement, and we realize this, like for all the conversation that we were having at international level in the coordination spaces that we were in, on the dozens, hundreds of meetings, of conferences that we went to talk about strategy, to talk about how we get out of the situation that we are in now. We understand that it's more and more obvious for everybody that we have in one hand to have like a very, like to have urgency, so that we have a very short time to act. And on the other hand, that we actually that it's impossible to solve climate crisis inside of capitalism. So that means that we need to dismantle capitalism in the short term, right? And this has been, like two sets of informations that are very very difficult to hold at the same time. Usually we kind of either hold urgency or hold system change, and we were trying to understand how can we as a movement and even ourselves hold both of them in a way that we can actually work with them and organize ourselves, right? So what we understood is that we needed to build like that there are currently a very good analysis of where we are standing, and there is several visions of where we want to go, but there was something missing, that is the path of how to go there, right? How we go from where we are, from this situation where there is so many things that we need to change and we have so little time to do it, to where we want to be, that is a society, a just society, a society where nobody is afraid to get out, to go out to the street, and where we have all, like the basic things covered. And we wanted to understand how we actually how we do this path, right? So that's why we see this book, we wrote this book as a tool that actually delivers the theory of change that can hold both of these sets of information, so system change and urgency, and also how we can have organization a model that delivers this theory of change, right? So that was the answer that we try to answer with the book. And maybe Elise, you can talk a little bit better about what actually is on the book.
Yeah. So I don't know who exactly that is here actually has had the chance to read the book. I know that Ted's read it 3 times, but for those of you that didn't, this is the index of the book. And as you can see by looking at it, this book is very short. So it's easy to read in that sense. Like you can pick the book in one morning and have finished the book on that same day. But at the same time, it deals with a lot of complex issues. And also it deals with ideas and theories that have been emerging in the movement for decades and centuries now. And these ideas by themselves, just the part of the history that's in the movement, it's not that easy to digest. But the part of how to deal with that, with all of this history that we know and all of these ways of struggle that we have been learning from, using them for the present day, it's even more difficult to digest. So we also say that this book is a tough read in that sense. So basically 1/3, the first third of the book is just update of what's going on. Where is currently, what is our political situation, but also, and more importantly, what is the situation of the international climate justice movement or revolutionary movement, not just climate movement. Then another third of the book, right in the middle of the book, is a lot of references to the literature, And the main argument of the book is also in the middle of the book. And the last third of the book is basically how can we organize ourselves around this, then what to do after you know all of this information, what you do with it, and how do we move forwards together. And the book is organized into 6 propositions that you can also see in the index. The first 2 propositions are about a global issue and a class issue. So the first proposition says that we have a global issue, so climate crisis and capitalism are a global issue, and the only way that we are going to be able to address this is through a global way. So we need to find a global way to address what we are living. The second proposition is that we have a class business at hand. And this is something that I don't know how it's in the US, but in the European climate justice movement, at least, is something that we've tend to forget about class. And the book says that the only way to solve the climate crisis, which, as Mariana has said, implies to dismantle capitalism, is through class struggle. So we need to address this issue in a global way and through class. The rest of the propositions of the book are responding to this very complex issue with more complexity. So when we are talking about global crisis and a global movement and class struggle and deadlines and having to win by 2030 and to dismantle capitalism, so system change, when we are putting all of this together, this is very overwhelming. I'm getting overwhelmed just by saying this. And it's a lot to ask from anyone present here. But when we think about this and when we start saying this, we're like, okay, no, it's too complex. So I'm just going to do this part that I know that is necessary, but not engaging with the whole. And basically, the rest of the book is how do we engage with all of this, and how do we get away from the defensiveness of saying, okay, the task is too complex, to actually saying, okay, that is a level of complexity that we need to build the capacity to deal with. And the book draws a lot from the ecology of social movements framework that was developed by the ULEX project, but it gives it a purpose. So it's not just a tool that we have for doing a small thing, but actually the intentionality of doing the task of dismantling capitalism by 2030, applying this movement as a party model that maybe will have a more chance to develop on the Q&A part. I don't want to, I want to get to that part soon, so I'll shut up now and pass to Mariana.
Yeah, so to give you some, like some sneak peeks, or to give you some teasers of like what we are saying in the book. So we have some parts of that here. So we have some quotes from it, and so one thing that we kind of understand, and picking up what Elise was saying, right? Like the fact that the task is so big, we end up waiting to have, like we end up saying, okay, so I'm not, I'm not enough, I will not be able to do it, or like to be part of it. And we are trying to wait for somebody else to do it, right? Like, so we are trying to hope for a perfect person to come and to actually, do that task, and we don't see ourselves as the ones that actually could do it and that have to do it now. And so that's one of the things that we kind of wanted to challenge each of us, and that we are challenging on ourselves also, is how we actually take that responsibility with our hands and understand that it's on us to call, to provoke, to organize, and to actually execute system change. Even if it's complex, even if it's overwhelming, even if it's frightening, and knowing all of that, and knowing also that it will not, it will not be somebody else appearing and doing that, or like a perfect, like a divine figure or whatever that we are waiting for, but actually that is exactly with all our flaws and all our failures and all of our problems that we will manage to do it also. So yeah, so that's one of the small sneak peeks that we wanted to share with you.
Another thing that is on the book and that we are trying to challenge in the current movement that we have is the idea of I am doing my part. So this kind of conformism that comes with all of this complex task of saying, okay, this task is very overwhelming, but you kind of shield away from responsibility by saying, no, but I'm doing this specific thing. I'm doing, I don't know, this petition within my organization or organizing this action that happens every year. And this is important. And I'm doing this. And this is what I'm going to offer to the movement. I'm doing my part and everyone else needs to do their parts. And maybe that way we can win. And what we are saying is part of what? So what is the revolutionary movement that you are currently part of, that if you actually do that part of that revolutionary movement, you can win? And if you don't know how to answer what you are a part of, is because you are being part of neoliberalism, capitalism, the current system. So what we are saying is that you cannot shield away from the responsibility of thinking in the big picture. You cannot shield away from the responsibility of thinking in victory terms and thinking about a holistic and global plan in order to win, and then to know that, okay, then when you know what is the big picture, you can say, I am doing this part because these other groups and other actors are doing their parts, and we interact in this way in order to try to do this. And if it doesn't work, we'll talk again, decide again what else to do in order to achieve victory. So if there's not a concrete task that you accept upon yourself as the end goal, then you don't know what you are being part of. And this is the other thing that we are trying to challenge. And this also means that then we're going to need to have a global plan. So this also means that we need to build a mandate within our organizations in order to plan and decide and execute strategies at an international level. So this is something else I wanted to bring to the conversation, which is kind of a novelty that, at least in the movement interventions.
And yeah, and like we are saying all of this, and we are not saying this has, this is something theoretical, or, like I'm not a writer, right? So like we are doing this and we are saying this and we are here today because this book, more than, like a piece of paper that we want to deliver to you, or a piece of a book that we wanted to deliver to you, it's actually a recruitment tool. And it's a recruitment tool to do this together, right? To take this task that Elise said it and very well. So to actually challenge ourselves to think on victory terms and on movement level terms, and understand that we do need to have this plan. We do need to work together. We do need to do this. And if you understand that we have to dismantle capitalism in the short term in order to survive, basically, in order to protect life and to keep life, then the best moment to do it is now. And we have to understand and talk together of how we give these steps together, right? So that's our invitation for all of the people here today, is to hold our hands and to give this step with us. And that's it, right? It's like actually how we can answer to all of these questions together and move forward. And on that sense, actually, so it's not a recruitment tool for nothing. So like maybe Elise, you can tell a little bit what it's next after the book.
Yeah. So what is the plan? And I think there's a very big fault on this book, which is that it actually doesn't say what the plan is. So it doesn't say, well, now we are going to create this campaign in the US that is going to tackle this issue, and then we are going to create this other campaign in Indonesia, and they're going to articulate through this. So that kind of plan, I'm sorry to disappoint you. I was also very disappointed, but it doesn't exist and it's not written on the book. But basically the book exists to build this together. First of all, it exists, not first of all, but one reason why it exists is to have common terms on our movements of when we are talking. So one thing that it was already able to do, it was to create some kind of common language, especially when we are thinking in terms of models of transformation and grand strategies. And obviously all of this existed, but the book was able to integrate this and to create this common language that allows us to understand, okay, this group is pursuing this, believes that change is going to happen this way. So maybe if I don't believe in that, maybe we can work together for this specific thing, but we're not going to work together for the whole task. So in terms of having clarity of what are the different actors in the movement, what are the different strategies, this is something that is very useful. But besides of that, when you find the people that accept the task and believe on the same model of transformation as you believe, then what we want to do through this book is actually to talk, to sit down and understand how we are going to execute this task. For that, we were doing webinars. They already ended, but we did webinars about each proposition of the book, where we developed more about this, understood invited different organizations to talk about their different experiences and learning from each other. And now we also have a sixth chapter, a sixth chapter on the website, which is basically different tools from different organizations and different movements about security, communication, how to organize. So very practical stuff that we need in order to be more capable of doing this. And then there's also the All-in Applied, which are articles that different authors and different organizations are using in order to reflect on their own experiences and learnings, or maybe just to reflect in general about the political situation that is going on, using the tools that are on the book. So kind of expanding this language that we are trying to build together, and to understand how can we move forward and also start to think about next strategies that need to come up. And we are now building up, and we have actually already started to do this, for trainings and workshops using the book tools, going to different organizations, getting together or different organizations on the same space in order to use the tools of the book and actually to plan, and maybe just to offer the tools for the organizations also to discuss and plan between themselves. And there is a national kind of part to this, and intervention at the national movements, but obviously, as it is written on the book, this task is a global task. So the idea is to do this not just between each country, but actually getting everyone that aligns with the book together. So we are slowly building up to this, and this webinar is also a way of getting this word out to more people. But we can talk more about how to move forward at the end of the session. So I will pause for now, because this is basically everything about why the book exists, what is the book for, some of the contents that are there, but yeah, now we can talk about questions that you have.
Thank you very much to Mariana and Alice. That was a great introduction to why this book, what the book tries to do. And I'm sure it's raised a lot of questions. So for now, I think this is the time for everyone to drop your questions into the chat, which should be open by now. And I'm going to kick things off with a few questions that are in my mind right now. So when I met Alice a couple of years ago, we were talking about climate jobs and there was a big project underway, international project to focus on climate jobs as a way of engaging working class people in and union and labor people in the project of building a new society and making a revolution against the old. And so one of our co-sponsors today is Labor Rise Climate Jobs Action Group, which is a grassroots effort to bring climate and labor activists into the same space. It's been very tough work and slow going. And I wonder what your thoughts are about integrating the ideas of a revolution that are put forward in All In with organizing the working class movement, and what your experiences have been in that area.
There are two sides of this. One side of this is about what is necessary at an international level to win. Another side of this is actually our experience in Climassimo trying to do the climate jobs campaign. So I think that it's obvious that we need to organize the working class people in order to do the revolution that we need to do, because the working class people is the global majority that needs to actually, take power in order to solve the climate crisis. So I don't think that there is a question about that necessity or not. I think that the only question is about who are in each country, what is the most strategical approach to do this? And what are the most strategical sectors of how to engage, taking into account, the current situation of the labor movement everywhere in the world. So in Portugal, we did it for a long time. I think it was very important. Currently, we are not investing in that, in doing that as much, because we realize that first we need to create this kind of social consensus within society that we are under attack, that the climate crisis is an attack against our lives, and that we needed to create this consensus in general in society in order to then be able to kind of doing, it could be climate jobs campaign, it could be other things. But for the international movement that we'll need to win, we'll need to do stuff like climate jobs campaigns, but we'll need to do a lot of other things. And I think that the task and the exercise that we have is actually to understand where do we need to invest, where it's more important to invest in different countries, what are the opportunities that we have that we need to take and how to use them, and actually also how to have the flexibility to understand if something is not working, why isn't that working, and what could we do first that could allow that eventually to work if we know that we will need to do that eventually. So I think that this is a kind of flexibility that we are not used to have, because when we invest in a campaign, we stay there years and years and years because we've invested so many resources and so much time. And it's very hard to actually kind of step away and realizing, okay, why is this not working? And maybe I need to do something else in order to then do that. But just on a practical note, Sinan and Leonor, who were coordinating the Global Climate Jobs campaign in Portugal, but also internationally, wrote an article for the All In Applied about lessons that they drew from the climate jobs campaign, which actually maybe has a lot of interesting inputs for organizations that are still working on this approach, which obviously is a necessary approach.
So I just want to follow up for a second on the question of organizing the movement as a whole in a way that I found rather unusual in the book, talking about all the organizations that see themselves as part of this movement, which maybe is kind of jumping ahead a little bit, because some organizations that have to be part of this movement may not see themselves as part of this movement. Working class organizations and climate organizations have different perspectives. Some working class organizations have not embraced the climate crisis as something that they need to be dealing with. And there are also climate organizations that haven't taken on the idea that they need to actually carry out a social revolution in order to be able to to overcome the climate crisis. So we're talking, but one of the things you point out in the book is that it's a need for organizations to put 1/4 of their resources into international coordination. And that's a call. It's not like, it can't happen because you put it in a book. So how do we get to that? How is that supposed to happen? Do you see signs of a level of coordination that exceeds the coalitions we've had in the past? And are you working with other organizations in other countries to bring this forward? And how about the Global South? That's a lot of questions in one, but perhaps one of you would like to take that.
I can go now and give a break to Elise. Yeah, that was several topics. Let me try to answer. So first, organizations are part of the movement independently if they consciously knows it or not, right? So like a movement, it's all the elements, all the organizations that are leading or that wants to lead society towards a specific change, towards a specific goal, and they are moving actually on that direction, right? So in that sense, you can have you can say that some elements, some organizations are part of the, like the movement that wants to dismantle capitalism in the short term, but they are not aware of it somehow because, or they are not seeing themselves as that, let's say like this. So that make the coordination a little bit difficult, of course. And I don't think like we will have like a one only table where we all got together, and talk there about how we're going to move forward, right? Like coordination at movement level and having thinking of movement as a party means also that we will need to have different spaces, different ways of coordinating ourselves, and understanding that a lot of us will not actually like each other and have good relationship with each other, or maybe not even able to sit down in the same table, and that the movement has to find ways to coordinate even with that, right? And how to do that and how to handle that. But with that conscience and more and more and more. So saying this, I think there are two things that are very important. One is to actually making this shift of how we are perceiving strategy, to think about strategy not only as what is the strategy of my own organization, but actually thinking on movement level terms. So what is the strategy and what are the different strategies and what is happening on the movement that I'm part of and around myself. So, and then based on that, how my organization and what I'm doing fits here and what is the next step that I should be giving, right? So that there is a difference of how we do strategy in those terms. So that's something that we have been pushing in the conversations that we're having, in the debates, in the workshops, and so on. And there is more and more and more a will for doing this, because there is more and more an understanding that it will not be one organization that is going to take out of this problem, right? That is going to do the change that is necessary. So we kind of have to find ways of having this more movement level thinking. So that's one part. The other part, in terms of like people putting resources on international level and on international coordination and global coordination, I think like for that, what I have been noticing is that when people understand, so the people that have understand and the organizations that have understand that it's impossible to win the fights that we are doing without having a global coordination, then you end up to find the ways to allocate that resources, right? And one of the ways that we actually have to understand that is that for the first time, so like there are several novelties around us. One is the urgency that climate crisis gives us, right? So like for the first time in stories of the movement, in stories of humanity, we actually have a deadline to deliver a change. It's not something that we can say, hey, if we lost, our grandchildren will carry on and eventually they will win. That's not anymore on the table. So that's a change of perspective of like what we should do. And the second thing that also is different currently is the level of globalization, right? Like, so we have been seeing more and more globalization. There was a fight against the complete integration at global level, and that had win in some levels. But still today, we are in a global state. So most of the functions, if not all of the functions that a state have, actually is happening at global level. So that means that in the same way that if you're asking, you know, like for municipality, or, you know, like if you're asking in a small locality to do government at local level to do something, you know that you're never going to win unless, you know, like at national level that's going to win, because the change is too big. Now we kind of have to have the same perspective with the global level, right? So to understand that there are certain things that the power is being held not at national level, but actually at global level. So that means that we have to have that, that the movement has to also be coordinated and organized at that level to be able to confront directly the power and to be able to actually shift where the power is. So yeah, so that's part of the thing that you kind of need to accept, or that we kind of need to be honest about, if to understand and to come to the conclusion that you actually have to put that resources if you want to win, because it will be impossible to win it if we don't do it, if we don't have this global articulation.
I just want to go into one other subject before we open it up to the questions that have been put in the chat. And that's really about the notion of rupture, which seems very central, this idea of a ruptural approach to things. What does it mean for an organization to be looking at things in terms of rupture? I understand the contrast with anarchist small group activity that just organizes within a workplace or within a tenants union or whatever, which is one of the currents within DSA in our country, the Democratic Socialists of America. And also then there are others who are like completely outside the system, the electoral system, and there's electoralism that goes on. But in terms of an organization devoting itself to rupture, what does that mean to you?
I think that since there is not a ruptural movement exist like currently, it's very hard to picture it. Because I cannot say just look at this organization and follow their example. And also I think that a lot of organizations are starting to change with the current political reality, because maybe a decade, 2 decades ago, you could still believe that the power, like the political elite, could give in if there was too much at stake, if there was enough pressure on the government, if there was enough people revolting, that the current system could be able to change some things and to become more flexible in order to accommodate the demands that we have. But as the climate crisis progresses, as governments are becoming more and more authoritarian, as more capital is invested into fueling this war, climate war, but also other wars in general, it becomes impossible for the capitalist system, if it wasn't, and probably it was always impossible for the capitalist system, but currently I think that I think that there are more and more organizations that have come to realize this, that you will not be able to reform capitalism in order to have what you need. And I think that one thing that you can, some examples that you can look, not of what is rupture, but maybe of what is not rupture. So you mentioned the examples of, like cooperatives or self-centered or not self-centered, sorry, self-managed factories. So you've mentioned these examples, but another example can be, I don't know if this is that popular in the US as it is in Europe, but the A22 network, which is the network that has the groups of Just Stop Oil and Last Generation. So the groups that threw paint at paintings and also blocked roads. I think there was also one in the US, but it wasn't very powerful. These groups are highly, they are highly they have a very big impact in getting the message out, and a very important work in getting the message out and creating a lot of discussion about the climate crisis when it wasn't being talked at all after the huge climate marches in 2019. But there is a big belief that if you are able to be very annoying and to pressure the system, that eventually they will give you an end fossil fuels by 2030 in the global north. And this is the distinction with rupture, is that you don't believe that this is possible, so you'll need to find different strategies that are not aiming at pressuring the ones that are in power, the ones that have the means of production, that has the political power, that you see that this system will not be reformable in order to stop climate collapse, because if it does, it ceases existing. And the capitalist system will have to defend itself from any measure against climate justice, because that is a threat to the accumulation of capital. So this is the main distinction between these different organizations. And what is a ruptural approach and how that looks like, that's exactly what we need to find out. What are the strategies that are necessary? What is the ruptural movement that is necessary? And how do you get the other organizations in the movement that we currently have to stop deluding themselves and the people that they will be able to do the change that we need?
Well, thank you very much. I'm going to pass the baton now, or the mic rather, to Maura Stevens, my system change comrade, who will take the questions that have come in through the chat and by email to ask you those questions so that we have a livelier discussion coming from people who have showed up here today.
Thanks, Ted. And thanks, Elise and Mariana. There's so much to think about and so much to talk about. The book is really compelling, and I do urge everybody here to read it. It's a quick read, and I love the way it's framed. The beginning part is what I wish all history teachers had read first, because it's a great synopsis. It's by no means complete, but it's a brief and very readable synopsis of the various movements that all sort of are looking for the same things that many of us are looking for, is a livable world without capitalism. And it talks about failures, successes, and different methodologies, and how all of them are important lessons for us today. Of course, everything is different. As Naomi Klein says, this changes everything, climate changes everything. And we all know that our time is very limited. I'm struck here by the need for real intergenerational as well as international and intercontinental solidarity. And I think elders who may not have to work for a living anymore and have some freer time and freer perhaps income or savings and less time left on the planet, it's our duty to act more bravely. So I'm just going to throw that out as a personal observation. I also want to observe that almost every week I get an invitation to join a new group. I think we have enough damn groups. I don't think we need to keep forming new groups. I think there are international models of solidarity already in place that could use bolstering. We in System Change, Not Climate Change, for example, started as a North American Turtle Island group, slightly expanded to Central America. When one of our members lives in Central America, but we're also a member of the Global Ecosocialist Network, for example, which is another place to start. And I am a very active member of Ecoversities, which is an incredible organization devoted to new ways of learning and unlearning that are completely compatible with the book and with system change core values. So these are places where we should be, meshing because they exist already rather than starting from scratch. So I'll just throw that out. And that's what some of the questions are about too, which is because we do need Larry Tallman says, as we do need an international movement of great strength, how will we create that in the very short time frame we have? His first question was actually one I'm not going to ask because it's not answerable, but it is, how long do we have? I think we all know there's no real answer to that. We don't have any, we have yesterday, we have till yesterday. But how do we create that big international strong movement? And I'd like to hear your ideas on that.
I think it depends a little bit from the continent that you are looking at, but I could say that in most of the places around the world there is a need and there is a search for an international connection, right, and an international work being done, and how can we do that? And I guess, like, adding up a little bit what you're saying, it's not that we need to reinvent the wheel, right? Like, we don't need to be always creating new things. Like, there are already like several platforms that actually can be used to do these, and the different projects that we also like are in contact with, and we're trying to build those bridges, right? Like between them and building the different perspectives. And we probably will need several different approaches, right? So it's not like there will be one way to do it. So like, so that means that we need to first to have a level of agreement of what is our task, and based on that to be able to understand what are the different tools around us and the different platforms that can, like, have that agreement and that can work through that, and how we can develop that, right? So, and saying the task has dismantling capitalism in the short term, right? So that's one part that I would like to say in general. Because I do think like there is this mix between, there are a lot of things happening, there is already a lot of platforms, and at the same time understanding that, but most of the platforms, after they are created and they are longer existing, they get very, like, inertia, right? So like they change, like it's very difficult to change something, it's very difficult to be flexible, it's very difficult to, like, to understand the flexibility that we need in the current status of the world. Right. So the reasoning between of these, of how, like, what are the platforms that actually are able to shift from that and understand, like, they have to be flexible, that there is this task in front of us, and that we actually can use these spaces to do that. And what are the spaces that are still blanks because of that, because the organizations or the platforms are not thinking on these terms, and they actually need to fulfill them, right? So to be more intentional when you're creating something new on these terms, right? Like, what is actually, why is this needed, right? And what is going to bring that is new, and that's in those terms. And so that's one part. And I guess, like, in terms of more international coordination, it's a bit like, first, we kind of need to put resources on it. I think, like, I have been with so many different organizations and organizers and people and activists and comrades that, like, say, yes, we need to have global coordination. We need to have international work. But then, like, the organization and the people don't put the efforts and the resources on, right? Like, but that's why we are saying, very simple, you kind of need 1/4 of your organization need to be, like, putting the energy and the power on this. Because otherwise it's very difficult, because they are very, like, it's relation building, it's strategy conversations, it's a lot of work on those terms, right? That you need to be able to keep up having. So that's a big part, that is that, in terms of, like, where it's not like having more resources, it's actually how you are using the resources that you already have, right? And how you are putting this as a priority, having the international work being done as a priority, and not as something that we do when we have time. And that most of the times that's what's happening, right? So, like, that's one shift, let's say, like this. And then the other shift that is also, like, very interesting is how we kind of change the perspective that you have in terms of international work. So, like, nowadays, most of the work that is being done at international level is about solidarity. And it's about, like we exchange, or like I exchange my, like what I'm doing here, and you explain what you're doing there, and we learn with each other, and we exchange some knowledge and some resources, and that's it, right? Like, and it was very nice. And I'm not saying that that's not necessary, that's very necessary. But we kind of need to give, like a next step on actually allowing your strategy to be shaped by the others, right? So what you're doing, like what you're doing in US to make sense to the rest of the world, what I'm doing in Portugal to make sense to the rest of Europe, and so on and so on. Like, right? Like understanding how you are allowing the other organizations and the global spaces to actually feed in and shape what you're doing at a more like national and local level, right? And how to have these things happening. So that's a novelty that we need to navigate together and to understand how to do that. And yeah, and I will say, I don't know, Elise, if you want to add something to that, or if we skip to the next question.
I want to add two things. One, in terms of what it means to put 1/4 of your organization power into international work. There's also something else, which is just knowing what is going on and just looking at what other people are doing in other countries, not just to learn from their mistakes and also from their successes, but because this is very like, this is still thinking in national level, like looking at what worked elsewhere and what could work in my country, but actually to understand what, if you are paying attention to what is going on, actually to understand where are missing elements in the overall movement that we need. And you can only do this kind of thinking of what is this international revolutionary movement if you know what is the movement that we currently have. And I'm not just talking about climate, I'm talking in general. And if you put different people together doing this, it's also more interesting than if you only put people from one country doing this. So a lot of the part of international investment is just kind of paying attention as well. Another thing, in terms of like the movement that we need, I think, and about how to have this kind of ruptural movement, I think that most of what we are saying is what do we do with the movement that we already have. So what we do with the activists, organizers, and leaders that we already have. But then there is a part which is, what do we do with the people that we don't have and that we need to kind of create and allow for them to emerge? Because a lot of great movements in the last decades at least, were driven by people that came from also that weren't active before. So actually, how do we also get to that moment where all of a sudden new leaders also show up because they need to step up to the reality that we are living? And this is also part of the task that we have in creating this international movement, is also actually to allow for that novelty to come and to do new proposals that no one is daring to do, because it's a lot of high stakes to try something new that you don't know if it's going to work or not. But most of the great things have come from that.
Well, it certainly does feel like more and more people are becoming aware that climate collapse is upon us, as community after community are being burned, flooded, roasted, and demolished by various climate-related weather disasters. So, I mean, there's that. But then it becomes more local than ever. Even though you may be flooded, you may be having forest fires in California and Portugal simultaneously, never the twain shall meet. You're just dealing with rebuilding and trying to rebuild the community or life after disaster in your own space without thinking about the bigger picture. So it becomes incumbent upon those of us who are not living in an immediate crisis to recognize the others and pull those groups together. But again, it is very difficult when you're staring down the barrel of a cannon. It's also the worry that we all have, and we know we're staring down the barrel of a cannon, and yet we realize the only way that organizing has ever worked is to meet one-to-one and talk to individuals and bring them into the meeting. We have this crisis of Linkages should be involving mass organizations which deal with the intersection of eco-socialist issues like militarism, imperialism, and migration, which arose at the recent Socialism 2025 conference, at which 2,400 comrades discussed such questions. So I don't know that there's really a question in there, but he's saying, how do you engage in the dialogue with such organizations?
So again, there's this distinction between Climassimo, which is actually where we are doing most of our like organizing work for the past years, and the distinction between All In, which is this project that was a book that was launched in January, and they have different approaches. Like in terms of us, like as individuals and activists in particular, like Climassimo has, and we have organized several international conferences. So Climassimo has organized the 4th and the 5th international eco-socialist encounters in Portugal, where most of the people that come, as you probably know, are from the 4th International. So these connections exist. And that's what we are saying by investment in international work, is kind of looking around at what exists and what are the proposals that you can do where you could eventually try to find something new that has potential. And even in terms of the global South organizations, 1 year ago, we organized a conference to boycott COP in Colombia, in Casanare, where most of the people on the conference, because it was in Latin America, were from Latin America. So Climassimo has all of these international networks, and obviously that's why in the book and in the conversations that we are having right now, there are also all of these actually kind of assumptions that we do about the movement that we are currently having comes from this work that Climassimo has been doing in these different kind of experiments and attempts that Climassimo has been doing throughout the years. Obviously, the ideas in the book that don't come from anywhere. At the same time, the book in itself has a proposal. Everyone that accepts or agrees with the main proposals is welcome to talk, collaborate, invite All In for workshops in their own organizations to develop the tools in the book together, and then from then on to understand what are the next steps that we can go together. All In can go as far as the people that have read it and agree with it want to go. And this is including to all of these different kinds of movements and networks that exist.
David Jones asks if you think there's value in participating in or protesting at the UN COP anymore.
Well, what Elise mentioned that we have done it in Colombia was an anti-COP conference. So actually, we were doing that work some years ago in that sense. That is like we need to boycott COP, and we need to stop going there, and understanding that actually asking them to asking them or pressuring them to change what is happening, it's assuming that one is possible to do such a change inside of capitalism, that we know that probably just stopping all the new fossil projects will be enough to crash, the most of the economical system around us, and the capitalists will not allow that to happen. But also knowing that it means that you kind of think that those people in power, so like that the capitalists will actually accept to do this change, and they that you can negotiate somehow with them, right? And that's something that we are saying, that it's not longer on the table. They have said it over and over again that they will not do it, that they will keep attacking us. And for us to still waiting for that is the same thing as if you are in a dictatorship and you are asking the dictatorship to to set you free. It's not something that you do. You actually have to understand that you need to fight against it and find ways to do that, right? So that's the shift, and that's the difference also with the ruptural perspective, is understanding that they will not gonna, like, it's not about like pressuring the government for them to do it or the institutions. It's actually the people that have to do that change, and we have to have that plan. And to add a little bit on was said before in terms of the international spaces and so on, just to say that we do know that there are a lot of international conferences happening, and I think like part of the frustration that we are coming, and part of the learnings that we are coming, also like that Elise also have that in her experience also, is that how many, like how many times we are actually together and we have thousands and hundreds of thousands of people together, and there is no plan that we do together, right? There is no strategy that we do together, because we are just there talking, but we don't see as we have a task that we have to actually answer to it, and we are the ones in this room that are going to answer to it. So what is your plan? Is it good enough? Okay, let's move forward. Who is going to do what? So we're not having those kind, it's not like we are having these kind of conversations and then we are doing the wrong plans. It's actually, we are not having that kind of conversations, right? We are sitting down and do debates, but not actually taking the responsibility and building the strategies together and finding ways of actually working on those terms, right? So I think that's something that I have not seen in the last years happening in an international level in a way that makes sense. Besides the several attempts that I have been part of, but have not succeeded also, right? So it's not something that so I just wanted to say that, because we are aware that our several spaces where, like people get together and talk, and we have been in most of them, or a lot of them. And if you are aware of something that is happening that we are not, please let us know, right? And the book is also a way to, like to connect people that are trying to think on these terms and are trying to do this task and might not be connected, right? Like, so we are also trying to do these kind of bridges. So just adding that.
Well, yeah, I understand. I think some of the questioners would like to know what you envision post-capitalism.
That part is not on a lane. Obviously, as I was saying before, the people that wrote all in this case, Mariana and Sinan, but also the other people that are involved in the project, as myself and others, mostly coming from Climáximo, have mostly the experiences and ideas that we have been building by the work that Climáximo has been doing. Having organized 2 international eco-socialist encounters, it would be hard if our vision for the future wouldn't be some kind of eco-socialism, even if we decide not to call it in that way for any kind of reason. But obviously that individually, those are kind of the ideas that we have for the society that we want to build. Climáximo in particular has a plan for Portugal that is called the Disarmament and the Peace Plan. The part of the disarmament is what we need to do to achieve end to fossil fuels by 2030, so to stop this attack that the climate crisis is. And the peace plan is the society, kind of the lines for the society that we want to build. So we are experimenting with these ideas. We don't want this perfect alignment on what will come after capitalism to be something that blocks us from working together, because we know that this is a very sensitive divide between a lot of organizations. But what we are trying to insist on is that if we actually don't work together in order to try to get to anything at all after capitalism, we can fight all we want, but we are going to live into a complete hell society. And everything that different left organizations are proposing for the future that is not a future within climate collapse is better than not acting. So this is kind of, why that's not that much developed on the book, because it will depend, and we cannot, and we want to be accountable in what we are doing, and we cannot promise that the world that we are going to build after capitalism is going to be exactly the world that we want, because we know that the struggle doesn't work like that. We know that this is something that we'll have to build together, and we know that we are going to live in a hellish world even after stopping climate collapse, and we'll have to be able to build the best that we can together.
Well, that's true. Several of the questions are kind of along the same line. I think so many of our folks who are here today are from the United States, and they're watching fascism take over quite rapidly, and is, you know, it's one of the worst manifestations of capitalism. And Reggie asks, the would-be elites plan on a fascist capitalist society based on artificial intelligence. And the US economy is based on consumerism, and clearly that will collapse before long. How do we address that while folding in another question, especially because the very real powers of capitalism are armed and we are not, and they have the financial means to even destroy a particular government, as with Liz Truss in England. And how can we be strong enough to deal with these really terrifying enemies?
Yeah, so that's part of the reason why it's such a frightening and overwhelming task that we have in front of us, right? If it will be something that it's easier, we'll probably had ways of dealing with it in the best way, right? And I think that's part of the reason why it's also very hard for us to face the responsibility and the task that we have in front of us, because it's not an easy task. It's not a, you know, like it's not a task that we can see easily how to make that. But saying this, I guess like we have to find what is actually our powers from our side, right? And we do have several of them. Like I think like a big part of it is it's our ability currently and our ability to actually build international coordinations and to actually be able to work in a much larger scale. That we do have the tools to make that happen, and there is already so many platforms and connection that if we put resources on it, that's something that we can build very fast, and that will unleash very new opportunities. There is a part that is more related to understanding how much effort they have to do to keep us in control. And although, you know, like they have all these narratives and all of these, you know, like all of these ways to break us apart, all of these ways to repress us, all of these ways, you know, like to change, or, you know, like to make us not being cooperative, to have cooperation between ourselves, or to make us feel isolated and so on. And even though all of that, we like the communities and societies still are able to, you know, like with the very few resources that we have, pass through that and still feel, no, actually we can, you know, like actually we, you know, like we can fight, actually we have power, actually we can work together, and so on and so on. So like we have that in our side, right? Like the fact that there is so many things that are fighting that is very difficult to actually impose on us, let's say like this. But I do think like the main thing to do to make this happen is to believe that we can do it, right? And I'm not saying this in an idealistical way, but it's actually, you know, like it's a long shot. That the probabilities are it's not like I'm sitting here and I'm saying, yeah, we have, you know, like 80% probabilities to win this, you know, like it's very, you know, like it's, you know, that's what we're going to do. It's not about that, right? It's understanding that the best probability that we have in front of us is this one, even if it's a very small one. And if we focus our energy on that, and if we actually, you know, like point to that, there is an actually chance for us to win and to do the change. And understanding that and starting to think on these terms change completely of what you start to understand that it's possible to happen. And what are the strategies and how you organize and how you and what you do in your daily base life, right? So I think that's the challenge that we are saying, and that's the jump that we are, you know, like inviting you to do with us. Let's say like this. So yeah, and knowing also like there will not be a best moment to do that than now, exactly for the reasons that we were saying, right? Exactly because of fascism is rising, exactly because of all the repression, exactly because of climate collapse, exactly because of all of this. This actually is the best possible time to win and to stop the barbarism and to stop all the attacks that we are under. So yeah, so that would be my side. I don't know if Alice wanted to add something to that.
I think just in terms of like the repression powers, in like the repression power in particular, there was something that Steve was saying that people were agreeing also with the chat, is that, well, actually, how did the Vietnamese people stopped the war in the US? How did the countries in Africa decolonize from Portugal? How did all of these things happened that they didn't have equal destruction powers or equal violence powers? I'm not saying that's not necessary. I think that's going to be a discussion for another time and not in this webinar. But yeah, just saying that we can look from history from that, and we can also think what we may need in a movement that wins. What are the elements that are present in all the movements that have won, or in most of the movements that have won, what we don't have in our movement and what we need to build because we want to win.
There's certainly an awful lot of power in love. I don't think it's anything whimsical to say that love really is the strongest force, and working from love as we do in our movements is really is a wonderful thing. I used to say that we need to keep our activism sexy and accessible and loving, because, you know, bring food whenever possible, keep it light, remember to play, because if you don't, it's just all doom and death and destruction. It's really oppressive. So, you know, having fun together, being a movement of joy and love is critical to our movement building. I don't think you can build a proper movement without it. Steve Ongerth points out that indigenous groups through organization and direct action have managed to stop about 30% of proposed fossil fuel extractivist projects in the past decade. I hope that's right, Steve. It seems a little exaggerated to me, but maybe you're right. And so aren't such movements actually undermining capitalism by robbing it of its accumulation and essentially ruptural in themselves? And I think that's a good point. Robin is posting a question about September 20th actions in the United States, I believe. Is that, Robin, just in the United States?
It's actually globally. I'm from Canada, and Seniors for the Climate is doing something here, and then there's you know, in other different cities. So I think if you Google it, you can connect, because it's international. Oh, somebody said, do I have a link? I will get a link.
Okay, thanks. And I'm going to recommend that people not use that G word as a verb. Let's just use web search, because that's the capitalist.
Oh, I don't, yeah, because yeah, I use DuckDuckGo myself.
Me too. Love DuckDuckGo. So I'd like to invite Mariana and Alice and Ted to give us some final thoughts before we wrap it up.
So what next, Alice and Mariana, for this? You know, it always strikes me that from the number of questions that came up, and the fact that there's a lot of people here who haven't had a chance to speak and have a lot of ideas, that maybe after more of us have read the book, we could get back together and have another session where it's more conversational and you don't have to present why you did the book and so forth, but where we engage. But right for now, what next?
So, first of all, reading the book or listening to the Mariana posted the link where there's a web page that says what are the different options to order the book. There's also an audiobook. The episodes are still being launched, so it's not completed. This link is also on the chat. So first, read the book. Then, if you still want to engage more with what's on there, there is a website. On the website, you can find the webinars that were done about each of the propositions that are in the book. There are also, and there is also the 6th chapter with organizational tools, which I've already talked about, and the all-in applied. If you also want to write an article yourself, sharing experiences with organizing that you've had, or just reflecting about the situation in the US, which is something that actually we have missing, please also write to us saying that you'd like to write an article. There are also reviews and interviews on the book. If you also want to help to get the message out to more people to know about the book, you can also do an interview to Mariana or write a review. But then the more juicy stuff, we are doing, as I said before, workshops with different organizations and different organizers to actually put the ideas that are in the book in practice and actually to go all in. If you are interested about continuing these debates and actually, or if you, I don't know, are reading the book within your organization and want to develop more what's on there, you agree with the task and agree with the propositions, write to me on the email that I'm going to repost that Mara sent before, but I'll post it again. And I will pass to Mariana for closing because I think I've said all I wanted to say.
Yeah, so we are very grateful for the invitation, for being here, and for having all of you here with us. And we do hope that we can, go all in together and do the next steps together. I would say that, well, we are very aware of what is happening in the US, and at the same time, we are very aware of the power that a social change in US has in the rest of the world. So in that sense, it's a huge responsibility and huge task that you don't have to handle alone, but at the same time that we have to understand how to do it together. So that's something that we can, be here in that sense, and we are more than happy to go there and to do events there and to do workshops and strategical meetings and stuff like that, or to support in any other way, and to understand how we can actually, do the task that we have in front of us. So don't feel shy on reaching out to us and on understanding how to move forward. And that's for us today.
So we'll close this out with that. Thank you very much, Elise Gato and Mariana Rodrigues of All In. We want to thank our co-sponsors, Labor Rise Climate Jobs Action Group, Coalition to Protect New York, Frack Busters New York, and People for a Healthy Environment. And as was said, in the chat, if you found today's program enlightening, you can tell your friends to look for this video on the YouTube channel of System Change, which is at bit.ly System Change on YouTube, bit.ly/System Change on YouTube, all run together, lowercase.
It's in the chat also.
It's in the chat also. Okay, so there you are. So let's get going and put out the fire and keep this conversation. And this has been a contribution to that international coordination that we all need and know we need. And I'm really looking forward to trying to argue with some of my colleagues in different organizations that we need to be putting a quarter of our energies into international coordination. Thank you again.